Hey everybody, welcome back to Bleyl Dev. Today we're going to be going over a basic Flutter application. We're going to be learning the basics of widgets, and we're going to be building a pretty fun app that I myself need for this new year. So what we're going to be building today is an app that I'm going to be calling Water Watcher. I've been having an issue where I'm not drinking enough water for the amount of soda I'm consuming, and so in an effort to fix this, I want to build an application that makes sure that I drink twice the amount of water for each can or 12 ounces of soda that I consume. So what we're going to be building is an app that tracks the amount of soda that a user consumes, and they input how much soda they consume, and it'll prompt the user to drink a certain amount of water, and the user can decrement that amount of water when they drink that amount of water. Or on the flip side, they can drink a certain amount of water, and it will, once you drink soda, deduct from the water that you've already drank, and kind of go from there. So that's the general idea of what we're going to be building today. We're going to be using simple state management, and so we're just going to be using set state and storing variables locally. The focus of this little app is to highlight some of the more common widgets and how to use them. So this is intended for beginners, but all the same, it should be a pretty fun app nonetheless. So let's go ahead and dive into this thing. So I don't need this app theme, so I'm going to remove that. And I'm assuming that you're pretty familiar with the basics of Flutter. At least you've set up a project before. If you haven't, the website has some great materials that you can use to do so. So this is just the default stuff it all came with. So I'm actually going to remove this. I'm going to keep the column of widgets. That's fine. Keep this center widget as well. That's fine. We'll add a color here, a background color, just to liven it up a little bit. We'll make it blue like water, kind of subliminally letting the user know they should be drinking water. Okay, so we're going to have a couple different elements. We need to have, on one side, we need to have a button, and that button is going to be maybe like an image of a soda can. And on the right side, we're going to have another button, and that can be like an image of a water bottle or a glass of water. And we're underneath those buttons, we'll have the count. And we'll figure out more of the business logic and how it's all going to work later. But let's go ahead and shell out those different widgets first. So the way that we're going to do that is, you can see here we have our column widget, and so columns stack vertically, and it has it set to align in the center. So no matter what widgets I put here, they will stack vertically, and they will all be centered in the middle of the app. And so what I'm first going to do is I'm going to have let's actually make this a row widget. Actually, I'm sorry, we are going to make it a column. We'll just do a text for now, and this will be Water Watcher, kind of like Weight Watchers, but Water Watchers. And this is just going to be the title. It'll sit at the top eventually. We'll have some kind of logo, and then we're going to have our main section in the middle, and that is going to be a bunch of row widgets. It's going to be a row widget. So we're going to have a bunch of widgets horizontally, and by a bunch, I mean 2. We are first going to do, and I'm just going to do this with containers. And a container is basically just a widget that holds pretty much anything. Containers can have colors, they can have sizes. I like to think of them as dynamic boxes that I can resize however I want. But we're going to have 2 containers in this row. So we're going to have one on the left, one on the right, and we can visualize this actually by giving them color. So colors.red. And this one will be colors.green, just so we can visualize them. And we're going to need to give them a width and a height. So for width, we'll say 40. For height, we'll say 40. And again, we'll get more into the specifics of how to dynamically size these and everything in a bit. But let's just go ahead and set everything up. So you can see here we have our 2 containers. And so the one thing missing is we do want them to be centered in the page. And probably not even centered, we do want a little bit of space in between them as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to say main axis alignment, and we're going to say main axis alignment dot space, we'll say space evenly. There we go. So on the left will be our soda, and on the right will be our water. And you see here that we've utilized this main axis alignment property for a row. What this allows us to do is space our widgets within our row or our column in a variety of different ways. So looking at the column one, for example, we use center, and center places everything in the middle. But let's look what happens if we use end or start. You can see it changes the positioning on where those elements are placed within the page. And so that's kind of the purpose of the main axis alignment. There's also a value called cross-axis alignment, which in the case of the row will adjust the inverse of what the main axis alignment does. So main axis alignment for a row adjusts horizontally, and so cross-axis alignment will adjust vertically. And same thing goes for column. Main axis alignment for a column adjusts vertically, and cross-axis alignment for a column adjusts horizontally. Okay, so we've got our two containers, and the next thing that we need to do is get some images. So let's go ahead and grab that. Okay, so I've gone ahead and found two images I'm going to be using for my water and for my soda. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a folder to my project, and you'll see here, try to build it in my lib. So let me click on Water Watcher, close that lib folder, and now let's add it. Okay, I'm going to call this folder Assets. I'm going to take my two new images and place them in my Assets folder. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to come to our pubspec.yaml file, and you'll see here that in the comments you should see that they tell you exactly how you want to lay out importing assets. So we want to make sure that we're indented one within the Flutter, and then we're going to say assets, and then it defaulted the indent, that's great. And I'm just going to say water.png and soda.png. Okay, go ahead and save that. I don't need these comments anymore. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and remove everything within this first container, and this is where we're going to be storing our image of our soda can, and we're going to say image.asset, and then we're going to pass the path to that image. So we're going to say assets/soda.png. Perfect. And you'll see here that is a pretty big image. We do not want it that big. So what we can do here is we can say height, and let's give it a fixed height of 200. That looks great. And we're going to copy this. We're going to paste it within our container and switch out soda for water. And I'm just realizing that the image I pasted for water still has a white background. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that really quick. Okay, that's been replaced, looks significantly better. So we now have our two different icons symbolizing the soda and the water counts. Now, currently these are just images. You can't click them at all. And so what we need to do is we need to change our container to a material instead. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to say material button. And let's do material button here as well. And what material button allows us to do is essentially make any child widget clickable. And so you'll see here that we have this yellow squiggly, and the reason why, let me close that, is it's expecting us to implement an onPressed method. So once I add this, we'll just say print soda, and let's implement it for our other material button and say water. And then let me go ahead and open up my output, give it a hard restart, and let me put the debug console, there we go. And now when I hit soda, you see here it prints soda. When I click water, it prints water. So these are now working clickable buttons. So now that we've got those done, what we want to do next is we want to display the count underneath of each. That'll be the next thing that we want to do. So prior to doing this, we're going to rearrange our widget tree quite a bit, but we first want to implement the variables that are going to store the values for what those counts are. So we're going to do a, we'll say int soda count is equal to 0, int water count is equal to 0. Okay. Alrighty. And next thing we're going to do is we are going to start rearranging our widget tree. So I'm going to cut this first button and replace it with a column widget. And then I'm going to paste it back inside the column widget. Now I'm going to quickly do the same thing with this one before it gets a little messy. Replace it with the column widget. Place it in there. And the reason for this is now we can place text linked directly below each of these items. If we were to do it previously in our widget tree, it probably would have placed it below both, but like one below the other. So we have like soda on top, then water. We want them to be directly hooked up to each side. So we do that by placing each side with its own column widget. You can also use a stack widget, but in this case, column is much more fitting. So we're going to say, just for now, we're going to say, I'm thinking we just do the number. So we'll say soda count on this side, .toString, and we want to give it some style of text style. And we'll give it a font size of 30, so pretty big. Actually, not big enough. Let's go to 40. That looks good. 40 looks good. And let's see what happens if we make the color white. Good. Okay. So let's go ahead and copy this same text widget and place it in the other. But instead of saying soda count, this will be water count. Perfect. And now what we're going to do is in our onPress method, we're going to start to utilize that set state method mentioned at the beginning. If you're unfamiliar with it, what set state does is if you're inside of a stateful widget, which we are, you can call set state and it will essentially, it will refresh everything within that stateful widget. So it'll refresh the state and basically think of it as refreshing a browser window. And it will update all the variables and display the new changes accordingly. And so we're going to say water count is equal to water count plus 1. Just keep it really simple. And let's go ahead and take this up to our soda one and say soda count is equal to soda count plus 1. Let's give it a hot restart. Perfect. And I'm just realizing one thing. What we want to do as well is we don't want to add water. What we want to do is we want to decrement the water. So we're going to say water count -1. And let's see if this is going to work. Perfect. And now it goes into the negatives. So when it goes into the negatives, that means the user is doing great with water. And we can add some logic here in a second to dynamically change the color to show the user like, hey, you're doing good, or hey, you've got to drink more. But this is a great start. And the one other thing we want to do is, in addition to incrementing the soda count when the user clicks on a soda can, we also want to make sure that we increase the water count. So we want to say, let's see here. We'll say water count is equal to water count plus 2. Perfect. Now there is one more issue. The issue is that we want to decrement every single time we decrement water. Nothing happens with the soda. What we want to do is we want, when the water hits 0, we want soda to also hit 0. So one thing that we could do is we could make the soda count a double value. And for every 1 water that the user clicks, we decrement soda by 1/2. And essentially what we're saying is, here is essentially how much soda you have left to get rid of in your system, or how much water you've got. So let me do a hard restart because I want to clear out these values. I'm going to change the integer for soda to a double. And if you're unfamiliar with variable types, it's not a subtype of type double. Okay, I've clearly messed with okay, that's fine. And for sake of just consistency, let's go ahead and make water as well of type double. Okay, and when we decrement water, we also want to say soda count is equal to soda count minus 0.5. Okay, perfect. So I drank a water, it added on 2, or I drank a soda, it added on 2 water. I drank a water, it removed half a soda, back at 0. And now if I drink a water, I'm ahead on soda, I drank 2 waters, hey, I could probably reward myself with a soda. Perfect. So the business logic is there. So now that we've got that there, let's go ahead and make this look a lot cleaner. And the way that we're going to do that is 1, we're going to change the coloring, 2, we're going to add a little bit more styling, and we also want to make sure that we persist the numbers when the user leaves the app and comes back in, and we're going to do that with something called shared preferences. It's essentially local storage for your mobile device. And it's really cool, and you can store simple values like we're going to do today using this package. Okay, so the first thing that I want to tackle is the shared preferences side. Let's get functionality working and come back to styling. So what we're first going to do is, you can see here, this is on pub.dev. This is the site where you find all packages. We're going to go to shared preferences and get the most recent version. And keep in mind, I haven't seen this with shared preferences, but oftentimes when packages update, they will change several different things in regards to implementation. So if something's breaking, if you're using a newer version than me, that could be why. Be sure to check that out. Okay, so we've added that dependency. You can see here it's running a pub get. If VS Code or Android Studio doesn't do this for you already, the command is flutter pub get. You run that in your terminal and it will update the pubspec.yaml and pull in any dependencies needed. So shared preferences is in. So the next thing that we're going to do, let me get this out of the way here, is we're going to utilize 3 values that we're going to be storing. We're going to store a date. We're going to be storing a double value for the water and a double value for the soda. And the reason why we're storing a date is we want to know, is this the same data from today? Like, was the last time I looked at this app today? Should I show those same values? And if it is, then we want to show the values that were stored in shared preferences. If, say, the values are different though, say I stopped using the app today and then I picked it up again tomorrow, if those dates mismatch, I want to reset those values to 0 because I no longer care about the previous day's values. I only want to know about today's. So let's go ahead and get that logic for storing dates working first. And we're going to want to do this inside of a method called initState. And initState, it's something that you should be careful of. For this example though, it's a perfect fit. So initState is going to be run anytime your application builds. It's the first thing that's going to be triggered inside of our stateful widget. So anytime this page loads, it's first going to check in initState if anything is needed to be done before it goes ahead and renders the rest of the app. So we're going to utilize this, and let's first go ahead and import shared preferences into our file. So we're going to import shared preferences, and it does not want to auto complete that for me. So let me go ahead and copy in that package. It's a little odd. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now that we've imported that into our file, what we're going to do is we are going to create a method called getValues. and it's going to be asynchronous, and this is where we're going to do all of our logic for reading the values that have been stored locally on the device when the app starts up. And so we are going to say try catch, and the reason why we're doing a try catch here is that if there isn't any data to be read from shared preferences, and the only time that this will happen is the first time the user ever uses the app. So if there's nothing locally to pull, we're going to say if there's nothing locally to pull, it'll hit the catch statement and it'll just return and not update anything. And that's fine. That's how we want it. But in the case that there is something, we want to say shared preferences prefs is equal to await shared preferences dot get instance. Next, we're going to have two values, both of type double. One called water, which is going to be equal to prefs.getDouble, and we're going to say water. We're going to have another double called soda, which is going to be equal to prefs.getDouble. I cannot type today, sorry about that. Soda. And then we're going to have an integer value called date, which is going to be equal to prefs.getInt date. And you may be thinking, why in the world are we storing integer for date? Well, what we're going to do is we're just going to, just to make things simple, have a variable called today, and it's going to be equal to datetime.now.day. And what this will do is it'll give us a numerical value from 1 to 7 for the day of the week. So, or I'm sorry, 0 to 6. So you have Sunday 0, Monday 1, Tuesday 2, Wednesday 3, Thursday 4, Friday 5, etc. And it may start on Monday, may start on Sunday. I don't remember which one. But the point is we have 7 unique numbers that we can use for the day of the week. If the user only uses this one day a week, this will probably not work, because if they use it only on Sunday and every Sunday, then it is going to always think that they're returning on the same day. So we might need to get a little bit more creative with this, but for now, we're going to just leave it as an integer just to have something working, MVP, if you will. And then once we have those values, we're going to say set state, and we're going to say today is equal to date. We're going to say water count is equal to water, and soda count is equal to soda. So this is all the logic we need for setting up our values when the user first enters the app. Now we need to worry about storing these values. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to create a couple of other methods. We're going to have a void method for, we're going to say set water. Actually, we're just going to say set local. Okay. This method is going to be asynchronous, and it's going to, basically what it's going to do is we're going to do another try catch. We're going to remove set state. We're not going to be setting the state of anything. We're also not going to be doing any of this, but what we are going to be doing is we're going to be saying prefs.setDouble, and the key is going to be water, and the value is going to be water count. Then we're going to say prefs.setDouble, key soda, value soda count. And one more, prefs.setInt, key is date, value is today. Okay, and then it can just return. So what set local is going to do is we can reference this right now, actually. After we're done setting the state of the water and the soda each time, we can actually call on our set local method. And what that's going to do is that is going to store the updated information into shared preferences for us. And let's go down. We want to do the same thing here. So basically, any single time that the user clicks on one of these, it'll update everything locally. Okay, we can check for this by just putting a print statement at the end before it returns and saying success. And before we go ahead and test this, I also want to make sure that I hook up our init state to call our getValues method when it first starts up. And for those that are very new to Flutter and are kind of getting a little bit lost right now, I'm going to walk through everything that we just did in regards to shared preferences. So when the app first starts up, what's going to happen is, first, these values will get set. So soda count's going to be set to 0, water count's going to be set to 0, and today will be set to an integer value representing what day of the week it is. Next, it's going to go to this init state method, and it's going to hit this getValue method. So it'll come down to this method here, and basically what it's going to try to do is, if there's no data locally, if it's the first time they're ever using the app, it's just going to not even do anything, and it's just going to go on its merry way. If there are values, though, from the previous time the user was using the app, it is going to look in shared preferences on the device. It's going to pull those values, and it's going to set them to the current values. Now, there's one thing that we're missing here that I didn't do yet. And what that is I didn't check to see if the dates were the same or not. We only want to call setState here if the values for the dates are the same. If the value for the date in shared preferences is different from the value of the date that was just set up here, then that means that this was done on a previous date, and we don't want to update the app. So let's go ahead and just add in that little bit of logic. And I'm glad we stepped through it, otherwise I would have missed this. So we want to say if date is equal to today, then we want to run setState, else return. And we'll just print different day. Okay. Okay, the next thing that we're going to look at is this setLocal method. So what's going to happen is every single time that we click on the soda can, it will first update the count of the soda and the water and set those in the state locally. And then what it's going to do is it's going to call setLocal, which will store those same values into local storage for us through the shared preferences package. And it's going to store water, soda, and date for us. And it'll print success. If it successfully did that, it reached here with no errors thrown, and it'll just return if some kind of error is thrown. And ideally, we want to print something like this. We want to say print e.toString. That way we can at least get a little bit of debugging as to what happened and what went wrong. So let's go ahead and do a restart on this app and see if this worked. So we're going to click our soda, and it hits success. And let's say I drank 2 sodas today, and it's prompting me drink 4 waters, but I only drank 3. So now we have this pretty unique value of 1.5 and 3. We've made 3 clicks, and so far it says it successfully set it 3 times, but we don't actually know that for sure. So let's go ahead and hard close this app, and we're going to start it up again just to make sure that it worked and that we're positive that it's storing things locally correctly. All right, and you can see here it just restarted and it correctly pulled the values. Awesome. So let's make one more change. Anytime that either of these values is above 0, let's make the text red. And when we get the values below 0, let's make it green. And when it's at 0, and when it's at 0, we'll make it white. So let's go ahead and do that. And so the way that I'm going to do this is, you can see here, I call colors.white right here. What I'm instead going to say here is I'm going to say soda color. And what that's going to be is this method. And basically we're going to say if soda count is greater than 0, return colors dot red. Else if soda count is less than 0, return colors green. Let's see what it's getting mad about here. Let's go ahead and remove this real quick, and just say else return colors.white. Okay. And this is actually going to be of type color. That's why it was breaking. Not colors, color. Okay, so that's soda color. Actually, let's just say, we'll call this get color and say type. And now what we can do is we can use this same method for both. So we can say get color and pass the soda count. And then down here, we can do the same thing and say get color and pass the water count. Okay, so let's try this out. Both turned red, both turned green. So let's make the font bolder. So we'll say font weight, it's going to be font weight dot bold. And this is all just styling now. And then let's mess with the colors a little bit. So instead of colors.red, let's do colors.red accent. That looks literally just the same. Let's mess with green a little bit in the meantime. Okay, I actually like green accent more. Okay, so let's mess with red more. So we have red, what happens, what does orange look like? Orange accent. I think we do want it to be some kind of red. Let's explore really quickly. I'm gonna grab a little bit of a brighter red. Okay, let's try this. We'll try color, OXFF, paste that color in. Oh man, that looks exactly the same. I'm just having a hard time clearly reading this. That's my biggest thing right now. Okay, let's try something maybe darker. No, dark would be more difficult. Let's do a light red. So I've got here a different hex that I want to try out. I mean, we're getting there. It's a little bit better. Let's go even lighter to where it's almost like a salmon. That's too much. Go in the middle. Not great, but it'll do. That'll do. Awesome. So functionally, it's working. Pretty much everything's working. The only thing left to do is get a logo on it and then put it on the App Store. So I hope you guys like this little tutorial on building a simple app with Flutter, getting to know a little bit about the basics with shared preferences, with widget trees, specifically columns and rows, and how to use set state and create simple applications using set state. You'll hear about a lot of different state management packages out there, but apps that are simple like this, there's no need for that. You can use set state just fine. If you found this video engaging, fun, useful, make sure you click that like button, subscribe to the channel. It's a big help. It helps other people find it as well. And make sure you stay tuned for more Flutter content weekly. And I'll catch you guys next time.